New at 10, a Jackson City Councilman is calling on the city and Jackson Hines Library System to finalize plans for a new downtown library.
He says the clock is ticking on a federal grant awarded to pay for it. Now, the city received close to $4 million from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development about 3 years ago to replace the Eudora Welty Library. However, the city has yet to find a location to house that branch. 5 years remain before the city has to give that money back. Councilman Kevin Parkinson said it might make sense to prepare a building now. He suggested keeping it offline until it can be staffed and furnished to prevent the city from losing the funds. The old library was torn down to make room for Krigler Park.